Dr. Alana DeGrassa here, president of Turning on the Lights Global Institute. And look, we are in March 2025. And look, when I think of this month, I think of it being Women's Celebration, celebrating women all around the world for all of the things that we do to love on others. Whether we do it as business owners, whether we do it as parents, whether we do it as aunties, sisters, friends, congratulations, look at us. And we have probably gone through a number of things in the formative year. And here we are in March of 2025, January, February, March, 3 months in. How are you doing? Now, I know for me, it has been a whirlwind. You could not have told me that this is a month where we would be laying a loved one to rest. And what is so interesting is that I gave a podcast a few weeks ago about weathering the perfect storm. And you guys can't even imagine that I have taken more than 5 planes, have traveled for more than 30 hours in total, not including some of the prep time. And I tell you, you will get closer to your higher power when you are in those skies. I am not kidding. You will think about what is important to you. You will think about close ones that you care about. You will think about what you would do different. And it was a sobering time. It's never an easy time to think that someone you care about is no longer with us physically. And I do have my spiritual beliefs as well. So I believe that they are in a better place. But it still is sobering. And it really allowed me to think about my own life and the fact that I don't have 10,000 years. We don't have 10,000 years. And it was interesting because around that moment of thinking about those things, traveling to a far place called Bollnäs, of all places in Sweden, really allowed me to spend time introspectively thinking about other things that I also wanted to do, but never got around to doing. And one of those things was being gifted with the gift of singing. And I would tap here and there with it, sing here and there with it. Maybe at a birthday party, someone will say, "Can you sing happy birthday?" Or maybe at some event and they'll say, "Don't you sing?" And they'll ask me to do a little scat or something, but never really taking it seriously. And I'll tell you, when you are in a true storm, it is uncomfortable. Nothing about it is what you want to actually experience. And I tell you, what was funny is during this whole process of going, Hubster surprised me and said, "Well, actually, there's an additional plane that we have to take from one of the places we're going." And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, another plane, right? So in all of it, it really taught me that in order to get through that, the long journey, the travel, the sleeping, the waking, the jet lag, I was really going to have to be very present in the moment. And that was what I alluded to in the actual podcast I did a couple of weeks ago. But what was funny is that in that process, we were actually heading to Portugal. And we literally was thinking, well, Portugal weather usually is very beautiful. The sun is out, it's shining. But upon getting to the landing, we literally were in a storm. And I thought, this is so funny because I talked about weathering the perfect storm. And one moment I can remember is the pilot saying that we were getting ready to land. And I think he knew that we were going to have some turbulence. So we literally sat in this cloud. It was like this gray cloud that we were just hovering in for a good, 10, 12 minutes, and we weren't moving. And I think at some point they must have thought, well, it's going to even be a little more unnerving and uncomfortable. So he made this announcement and said, "We're going to land in 3 minutes." Basically, hold on to your seatbelts because it's not going to be a smooth landing. And basically, we felt the winds and, the plane was moving and we eventually did land. But I tell you, those 3 minutes, they were just like, to me, they could have been an hour. And that truly is what a storm is like. To me, it doesn't matter how many days, because when you're in it, you're just in it. But in the moment of being in those clouds, I just thought, teach me, what can I be taught? So out of all of that, I really, really, really was reminded of the fact that the breath that we have, that we sometimes don't even think about as we get up, as we go to sleep, as we wake up, what a gift it is. And also, whatever those talents are that we have, that we take for granted, to actually think, how can we utilize them more, or to be fully present? Because anytime you lose a loved one, or you hear about people passing suddenly, or whatever it might be, even if it's a person who's had an illness for a long time, I don't think anything ever really prepares you for that moment when they're no longer with you. And I think it's the same way with us. We realize how short life can be. And so even going through that storm, landing and finally being amongst loved ones and seeing the hugs and seeing the tears, it really makes you think, I don't want to have life regrets, so what would I do differently? And I was reading a couple of articles about regrets that people have, regrets of not living fully, regrets of holding on to things, regrets of not letting things go. And I realized, fear plays a big role in a lot of the decisions that we make. And so it's very easy to think that tomorrow you'll wake up and you'll have all this time to do what you didn't do today. But what that taught me was, girl, sing. If you want to sing out loud, sing like you sing. If you want to speak like you speak. And sometimes when we're inundated with social media and we're on the social media streets and we're listening to others, we're looking at others, we want to be inspired as well. But there's a danger in that, because you never want to substitute your attention to something or someone or an idea that surpasses what you also feel within, right? We can look up to people, but we also can't ignore if someone is acting unethically, even if we look up to them. We have to be in a place where we are, at a place where we're saying to ourselves, you know what? How can I contribute in this time in my life in a way that's honoring, what it is that I would like to do? And even the choice to think that you want to do something or not do something is a gift in itself. So what was interesting, I said to myself in those moments, I don't care anymore. I'm going to sing. I'm going to write more poetry. I'm going to share that with my audiences. And I'm not going to hold myself back and say, well, you can't do that because you're a business person, or you can't do this because, no. I mean, if you're given that gift of cooking, baking, whatever it might be, go ahead and cook it off. Go and let other people know what you do. And that's the other thing, right? Is that sometimes we think we're too old to pursue or to share with others something that is really magnificent for us. And what I've learned is, when you look at something amazing that someone else has done, that they shared with you, maybe it's a song, maybe it's a poem, maybe it's something that they've had and held on to, but they decided to share it with you. To me, it's such a gift when someone does that. And then it's even a bigger gift when you take an extra step and share it as much as you can with other people who could benefit, who can feel the joy just from what you're doing. So I would say, if this were a part 2 of Weathering the Storm from the first podcast, that this one is, once you face the storm and once you empower yourself through that storm, and then once you find ways to build up on what you're doing or what you're dreaming for, I think the other part too is, don't be afraid to tap into those areas that seem to come so naturally to you. They're a gift, right? And so don't be afraid to also take some time to develop that very gift that you have. And a lot of times, sometimes when I see people like, I think we all need coaches. We need coaches to empower us. We need coaches to remind us of our genius. We need coaches to tell us to go ahead and do it. But then there are certain times when I do believe you have to be able to hear yourself. Because sometimes, unfortunately, you might have someone who sees those vulnerabilities and will play with those vulnerabilities. So you got to be able to tell where the pendulum is swinging for you, what you need, when it's time to move on, and be okay with it. So one of the things that I found to be so fitting was how instantly I knew, oh my goodness, it's time for me to sing. Oh my goodness. I felt this gut inner feeling. And I guess that's the way I can explain it to you if you're trying to figure out, how do you know that now is the time to get something going that you've always wanted to do? Now, I do think so. When I was reading the reports that people were making that, they regretted working so hard, or they regretted never trying out their dream because they feared what other people thought of them doing it. They didn't spend enough time telling their loved ones that they love them. And I think for me, the hardest part is when you do tell individuals those things. Oh, I love you. I care for you. I want to have a genuine conversation with you. And they push you away. That can be a little unnerving. But I have also learned to love people at a distance, because also sometimes people have been hurt. Sometimes people have been also waiting for their quote unquote promise. And for whatever reason, it did not happen. And so they're just looking at it like stone cold. Like, you know what? I don't care if you're offering something of value to me. Either I'm not ready for it. I don't want it. I've been too, I've waited this long for it. It didn't happen. So why should I trust that it's going to come from you? So I just want you to know that it is absolutely okay to also let things go, let people go, let circumstances go that clearly are not in your best interest for the time. Or clearly you're in a new phase and you want something different. And so even with my clients, they are always free to say, I'm in a new chapter. It's time for me to move forward. And I say, I wish you well. I'm so glad for the time that we had, the memories we had, the learning opportunities we had, and good luck to you. So we've got to be able to balance that out, because even when it happens in our own lives, we want to feel like birds. We want to feel like we have wings and we can actually fly. And lastly, there are some times when you need some newness. Like, it's interesting because sometimes people will say, oh, well, you don't need to do anything new. Keep utilizing, what you've been doing for the last 3 years. And sometimes you need some things to be freshened. You need some new things. So there's nothing wrong with figuring out in this moment, in this month of March, what you want to shift and what you will keep. And there's nothing wrong with saying, oh my goodness, I love to do that 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but that doesn't excite me anymore. I still need to keep some of these elements of what I'm doing, but here's how I'm going to change the game for myself in this month. I think the other thing too is we can't also ignore the fact that people have to work. We all have to work. There'll be times when maybe you're soaring financially, and there might be times when you are squeezing and clenching. Whatever it might be, there are times when you have to do things you don't like to do. However, if we have 24 hours in a day and you have 8 hours of that day to give to your job or to give to something that is paying the bills, that doesn't mean you don't have the rest of that day. And even if you only have limited time, even when you use the bathroom, that's time to empower yourself, pump yourself up. It really is all about what's going on in your mind. It's really all about your dedication to persist into maybe a purpose, or maybe you feel like it's a calling, or maybe you feel like it's your destiny to be able to support, help, lead, perform, whatever it might be, others in a way that adds value. So I want to wrap up by saying we don't have a 10,000 years. It feels like we do, but we really don't. And when you recognize that, look at those things you said you always wanted to do. I don't care if you are 64 years old. If you always wanted to sing, find some place and do a performance, or get your friends together and sing in front of them. This is a gift that is going to touch hearts. And I used to have these big needs for this big outcome. Oh, I want to do it until it's this big. And now I'm realizing more and more, as long as it's big in my heart and I'm able to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take my time and be integral in that process. And there will be times when people tell you to hurry up or do it this way or do it my way, but it has to feel comfortable to you. So you won't have 10,000 years. Figure out, what is that thing or those things you really say that you want to do. And number two, find a place to fall in love head over heels with some aspect of what you are doing. Because not all of it is going to feel like a rainbow all the time. You might love writing, but feel like more people need to read what you have. So there might be an element of work where you need to send out some emails to others to let them know what you're up to. Or like myself, you like singing and you haven't sang in years. So you might need to dedicate some time where you're going to do warm-ups, meet with a vocal coach, and make sure they help you to stay accountable to this new person you would like to be. Now, change takes effort. Transformation does not happen because you want it. Transformation first begins here. Then you persist with that ideation, thinking about what it can do for you. And then you make subsequent decisions. So for years, I already knew that I liked singing. I always would say I want to sing. I would tell my husband that. Years would go by, but I wasn't dedicated to my own dream. So even though he was buying me tools and getting me equipment and all of it, I just was not using the tools. Part of that was imposter. Part of that was fearing something I loved so much. And now it's a different experience because now I know that aside from loving to sing and aside from wanting to sing and now having ideation that if I really want to see where that can take me, then I have to take the decisive steps of actually having a vocal coach and actually determining time to work on my warm-ups and vocal warm-ups and all of that. And the same thing with my writing. So in the same way, if you're a business owner, if you're an author, coach, speaker, leader, how are things going to be different for you in 2025? How can you love parts of your business again? How can you rededicate certain parts of what it is that you've been talented with to do? And I tell you, when you utilize and make those small steps, you will begin to feel like, oh my goodness, this feels good. You'll feel some kind of emotional groove going. And it won't matter what's going on around you because you're in that element of focus to the point where you're willing to move consistently forward. So I really want you to subscribe to toldyouSpark.com. I also want you to make the decision to come to some of our events in April as we talk about stories of courage, as we talk about building confidence and living in these very transient times. And I double dare you to fall head over heels in love with that element of what you do that you enjoy so much. Like, just feel it. Oh my gosh, I love helping people. I love being able to support this person with this particular challenge. And I love that look that they had once they looked at me and said, oh my goodness, thank you so much for supporting me. Like, when you can think on those moments, it will just propel you to move forward. And truly, that is what persistence is. It's the consistent efforts over time that consistently lead you towards making positive decisions and decisive choices that lead to the outcomes you're hoping for. Well, that's it. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Upgrade My Life and Biz podcast and blog. Take care.